What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Fine Arts and Friends, where I interview creatives in Austin, Texas to talk about their process, obstacles, and challenges that they face.
Sorry. Am I supposed to be looking at a camera with you? What?
No, I just do that for the intro.
Okay, gotcha.
And then for the rest of the time,
I don't have to, right?
Nah,
okay,
nah.
okay.
If you do happen to peek towards the camera, that's chill. You're not required to, but we're just gonna act like it's just here.
Okay, you just scared me there. Okay, sorry, go on.
She said,
Well, I didn't know if I was supposed to be like,
fuck everything you heard.
or whatever. I don't even know. Yeah, okay. Sorry.
With the red light.
Okay.
That one, if you are gonna look at one.
I don't want to.
Okay, then don't. Just we could be here.
Okay.
That's okay.
Okay.
Welcome to Fine Art and Friends, where I interview creatives in Austin, Texas to talk about their creative process, challenges, and obstacles that they face. Today we have Rewon Shimray, and I just want to give a quick introduction, and then we'll get to it. So Rewon is an autobiographer painter raised in Austin, Texas. She got her bachelor degree from Baylor, studying journalism, religion, and studio art. Her work relates to being a queer woman of color, daughter of immigrants, and an evolving human. She mixes personal photographs, popular iconography, and cultural artifacts. She alters everyday items and images to depict a nuanced perspective which reflects her personal experiences. Rewon, thank you for being here today.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Yeah, get you on the show. So you described yourself as being an autobiographer painter. You are constantly revealing through your art the world around you. It is the world that you have been raised in and socialized in, and it's also the one that you have been learning and unlearning. As far as creating artwork to represent this reflection of your world, what is the starting point of this process?
As an autobiographical artist, which means that like I'm painting my perspective and my life experiences and trying to accomplish that, what's the first step?
Yes.
Yeah. I think the first thing is being thoughtful about my life and my experiences, identifying what it is that I need to process about it all. So my first solo show last year in May 2023 was all about my Asian American experience. This year, the show that I'm working on, I realized what I want to focus on is, it's kind of this abstract idea, but the title of the exhibition is going to be Cycle of Knowing. What I identified in my life was that I think I know something for sure, and then I learn more, and I don't know anything for sure. And so I kind of wanted to reflect that experience of mine through my art. And so I really think that's what I am trying to do. I'm pretty new to this. I've had one solo exhibition. This one that I'm working towards will be my second. But I think in every show that I do, it'll start with answering a big question that I have about life, or like a big thing that I'm trying to process.
Okay. So It starts with reflection, thought, the big question, what you're trying to answer. I'm curious about, how do you go from the thought to finalized piece? Is there like writing involved? Are you taking, because I know you use a lot of like old photographs that you already have. Like, are you taking more photographs? I know you use imagery. Are you researching imagery? I'm kind of also curious about what's next after it's thought.
Yeah, well, so I'm also like a graphic designer by day, and so I am thinking about what images I can combine to relay the message to people who don't have my specific context or experiences. So I'm thinking about common symbols. I'm thinking about moments in my life that are really recognizable from a photograph. I'm using both my personal images, which are my way of depicting my memories, mixed with popular symbols to depict the message that I'm trying to get people to understand.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Just give me a second. I think that's a wonderful process that you have. I'm sorry, I got a cackle.
Why?
I've been trying to hold this laughing this whole time.
Why?
Because you started laughing earlier. And you were covered.
I feel like you should just laugh when you want to laugh.
But you were covered and I didn't. You were so serious. It would have been so odd. Rewon's also a very good friend of mine. I would say that. So, yeah, it's going to be a little
have
goofy.
Some giggles.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so thank you for sharing your process. I'm curious about your relationship to photography within this process? We talked about your relationship a little bit with graphic design, but how specifically has photography influenced your practice?
Yeah, I think photography is really powerful because I'm telling my story. So I also do a lot of self-portraits. So I think photography is able to access this like immediate self-portraiture that I think is really powerful, and it is also grounding to reality. Like in paintings and illustrations, you can kind of warp away from reality, but in photography, you're forced to use everything that is real and physical and like there in that moment. And I think that can be really interesting for creating art.
Yeah, especially art that you create, which is
Autobiographical. Yeah.
That's the word I'm trying to say. That's the word I've been trying to say. Yeah, because it's just like a snap in time. Like you can look at a photograph years later and be like, dang, I didn't realize like the reality was different. Like you do make a lot of self-portraits. I was going to say what's the reasoning, but you already said it, because you make work about yourself.
Well, I actually do have something to say.
Okay. I would love to hear it, yeah.
Yeah, I think something I'm really purposeful about too in doing my paintings, since a lot of them are self-portraits, I purposely choose images of myself, the moments that I'm trying to depict. For one, that I was trying to talk about how it was for me going to a majority white school growing up. I chose a picture of me like at the peak of that feeling, when I was like so aware of my differences, my being different. And like a painting I'm working on right now is about like growing up in the church and knowing that I was queer but not wanting to say anything because of that. And I chose the picture I'm using to paint about that is actually a picture that the first girl I dated took of me like on one of our first dates.
Crazy.
You know, so I try to like really integrate that because it just feels genuine. But also it's just like, yeah, it's just crazy. Yeah. It's like,
well, I think it's wild. It's cool that you have something that represents the time of when you were when you were actually in it, because I work with a lot of self imagery as well, and for me it's a different process. So it's cool to hear that you have visual representation of, you know what, back then this is what I was feeling, and it's cool that it's resurfacing now. You know, that you want to depict a moment in time where you felt it already, but it's becoming present again, and you can go back and find that imagery. Yeah, it's
interesting because it's like, well, I think it's two things. It's like the photo itself, you can only know so much, and then when I put that photo in the context of my painting composition, now you know more than you would have then.
Yeah.
So then the second thing is like that photo is a reflection of me then, and then the painting is still a reflection of me then, but it's more a reflection of me now looking at me then. So it's like this kind of like meta thing where it's like time travel almost.
No, it is though. It really is. And that's it's wonderful that you can have that type of reflection. It kind of leads me into questioning, because we talked about where your self-imagery is coming from, but what about the symbols that you include in your pieces?
I do a lot of reading, so honestly, sometimes it's just like Google, and I'll go into Google and I'll read all like the academic articles about this topic, and I'll be like, okay, these people have experienced this, or like this was a commonly used object, or this was a part of the culture, or I don't know. I just find different things and I follow that rabbit trail. Or I'll like to read a lot of like memoirs and poems about a theme that I'm working on, and I'll kind of follow that rabbit trail and think like, okay, like how many of those symbols do I think could hold bigger meanings? One of my paintings that I feel like have resonated with people most is this composition of 4 panels, my mom, my dad, and me, and we're all tied together with this Chinese knot composition.
Yeah.
And the Chinese knot, I don't even know how that came about. I think it was just immersing myself in the world. I really like to do that, is like have a month or so where everything that I'm reading is related to that. So different books, different articles, different like blogs. And then it's also, I'll try to build like playlists about that theme and be like, okay, how have other people processed this through art, or like, what does this sound like? What does this feel like?
Yeah.
Basically immerse myself in that world, see what like symbols arise from that, from delving into that. And then, yeah, basically look at what pictures I have. And like, I don't know, sometimes I just look at pictures and things just happen in my brain.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's usually through this like prolonged period of just like immersing in what already exists. Yeah.
I think it's wonderful that you give yourself the time to do that. You know, you're giving yourself time to like, okay, I'm gonna live in this a little bit. I'm gonna immerse myself in this experience. I also think it's unique how you are doing something that reflects your own world, but you're also allowing influences from the outside world to help you depict what you're trying to say. You know, it's kind of like, I think it's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like, it is my story, but at the end of the day, like, I'm not that different. Like, a lot of people have gone through this. Like, I am trying to tell my story, but I do it in an awareness that like other people have experienced this, and this can be meaningful for other people because of how they can relate to it. So I think, yeah, I definitely like used to have a thing where I would see a painting or like, you know, something, and I'd be like, damn it, like, I wanted to do that. And I'm like, well, you know what? Like, that's okay. Like, we've all experienced this. We're all trying to like express it, and like, I'm gonna do it in a way that feels genuine to me. That's just because we're all like people living in the same times, under the same circumstances.
Yeah,
You know,
we're a reflection of the times,
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and what we go through. So
Yeah.
I remember one time me and you were hanging out, and we both like had an idea. It was the same exact. we had the same exact idea.
Wait, it was, what was it? It was like,
It had to do with like coming out of water.
we both
Yeah.
wanted to do pictures of us coming out of the water. Yeah. And we both like had the notes with like the date timestamp to be like, yeah, there's no way. We like copied each other on that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was funny.
It's funny, yeah. It just happens that way.
Yeah.
But I promise you, like the way like we both would have depicted it would have been so different, you know.
Right.
So it's like if you do have an idea, I'm just saying this for the audience. If you do have an idea and you think, oh man, so and so
Say
has
to the
done this
camera.
before. If you do have an idea that someone has done before, or you think someone is doing it, it's okay. Go do it, because no one's gonna do it the way you will. That's what I have to share for you.
Nice.
You happy?
I am.
Okay.
I'm like, they need a look in your eyes. I know you meant it.
Will you want to say something to them?
No, it's weird for me.
Okay.
It's too real.
You're just gonna peer pressure me
Yeah.
to do it. Okay.
You're the host. This is your thing.
So I just gotta.
I'm just passing through.
Okay. Okay. So let's say you have a thought, you have reflection, you immerse yourself in the experience of the feeling, and you create an art piece. I'm curious, does your feeling to the subject matter change from start to finish? Like if you're okay, can we talk a little bit about
for
that?
sure.
And what's that like for you?
Yeah, it can be intense. Like, people are like, oh, painting's so meditative, and it is, but what makes it meditative is it requires your whole focus. Like, painting is crazy. Like, you have to look at this picture, look at your palette, mix your palette to match the picture, then put the painting on the color on your palette to your painting to match the picture. Like, it's crazy, all the focus you have to do and all the things. And when you're painting something that is so tied to your like personal trauma and being forced to focus on it for so long, there's a lot of things that happen. Like, I wish I could be like, yeah, and it heals you, which is part of it, but it's a lot. Like, part of it is it becomes not real. After looking at your own face for a second, it becomes not real.
Like it just becomes like an object.
It just
like
becomes an object.
Yeah.
And there's like cool parts of that where you're like, oh, cool, like I am anything I want to be. But there's also like a weird part of that where you're like, who am I? What am I? But yeah, I mean, for example, I was painting before I decided to focus on my cycle of knowing exhibition, I was actually going to do one about my dad who passed away suddenly in 2020. But it was just so hard to just like stare at his photo, at my painting of him for that many hours. I was like, you know what, I'm not ready for this. And so I think when you're painting something or creating any type of art about a topic, you have to be ready to like really sit with it. And that's what I have to do with like everything that I'm painting about is like, yes, I'm doing the painting. It's like a very physical act, but it's also so mental and you're just like forcing yourself to sit with this thing for so long.
Yeah.
I think that is, you know, and the theme of my show is cycle of knowing, this idea that the more time you spend with something, the more your opinion changes. And so that's definitely, I think what it came from is partially my painting process, is the longer I sit with a painting, the more my opinions about it changes. Yeah, for sure. And so it's interesting. Right now, the paintings I'm doing are really focused on my experiences in the church. And yes, like I already knew my composition, so that's kind of already set. And you would think like, okay, you already know the composition. If that's set, your opinion and what you're trying to say about it is already set. But it actually isn't. Like the longer you sit with it, you're like, well, this could actually mean this too. And actually, I also feel this way about it. And that still shows through that composition I came up with before, even though I didn't realize it. And so I think that's why painting is so valuable to me, is that it is just like this time I set aside for myself to think about something for a really long time. I like don't always know what's going to come up in that time that I'm spending with it. Yeah,
that is so true. Painting forces you to face whatever the feelings are that are accompanied by it. Like, you're going to sit with it, you're going to have to process it. And I think it's cool to acknowledge that, like, sometimes you aren't ready to face certain things, and that's cool, because at the end of the day, we are the ones who decide what we're creating, you know? So it's we're the ones putting the pressure on us, you know?
Right.
So
yeah.
like, so I think it's interesting. Can we talk a little bit more about the concept of your upcoming show?
Yeah, for sure.
And I do have I'm gonna say it now because I fear I might forget later, but I also want to ask if there's a date for the show set already.
Sure.
Okay, but yeah, let's talk more about your concept for the show and talk about what that means.
Yeah. So I didn't even know that this was going to be the concept of the show until I kept making pieces, and I was like, this is the heart behind all these pieces. So basically, I've been painting about my experiences growing up in the church. It wasn't like necessarily super restrictive religion or anything, but I just put a lot of pressure on myself, and I internalized a lot of the theology that wasn't the most healthy. And I think it was really hard for me to come to that conclusion, because up until my senior year of college, I thought I was going to be a full-time missionary. And so I had staked my whole identity on this, my whole, career mobility on this, all these things, and also my community, sense of self-reality, all these things. And so I was really upset when I realized that Christianity wasn't for me. And that was a lot of feelings of anger and betrayal at first. But I still had friends and family who were in the church. And I was like, but I'm not mad at them. And I know that it doesn't affect them negatively the way it affected me. But I had all these images in my mind, those culminations I was talking about of me plus the symbols, right? That I knew I wanted to say about my experiences. But I was like, but I don't want people to think that I'm trying to say that's all it's about, and what I experienced is the absolute truth. And thinking about that, I was like, that is so the thinking of fundamentalism, the theology of fundamentalism, fundamentalist theology sometimes is that the absolute truth and all other religions are false. And that's what I was taught, was that what we were being taught was absolutely true. Everything else was false. And even though I don't follow the religion, I realized that was still my sense of thinking, was
I see.
What I believe to be true is true. Whatever, anything else is false. And I was like, that is so not the way to live. And so I'm using religious imagery and these symbols and these stories from the Bible, things like that, to basically cast a lens through which to explore new ways of thinking, because it's this juxtaposition between the black and white teaching and what I'm saying can be broader and more inclusive and more open-ended. And so I'm basically using religious imagery to create all these images that are supposed to be open-ended prompts for thinking, because usually religious imagery and painting is led you to believe let me start over. Because usually religious imagery and paintings are trying to lead you to one conclusion, but I'm trying to use religious imagery to lead you to multiple conclusions, and for people to be curious about that. And so that's my show. For the first time, I'm going to be doing like paintings. I want to also do like sculpture, photography, collabing with you, some other mediums like worksheets and stuff, just to have multiple points of access. Because I really do want this to be a invitation for people to explore this way of thinking. So yeah, I don't have a date or anything for this show. I'm just creating all of the work. I'm going to keep putting it out there that I'm doing this. Yeah. And just see and obviously I'm going to start collabing with talking to galleries and things.
And I think the fact that you have the work already is perfect.
Yeah, I think I'm just letting it happen when it's gonna happen. Yeah, I think also it's kind of scary not doing only paintings, because I kind of know a general idea of how long it takes me to do paintings, but with multiple mediums it's that could take, I don't even know.
I feel like working with the other mediums will inform you. It will teach you some things that a certain medium won't. So I think it's wonderful that you're going to explore different mediums throughout this process. It seems as if what started you along this process was curiosity of, what if this isn't the absolute truth? What is my truth? What does this mean? How can I depict that? And it seems as if you're also creating an environment that leads to curiosity. And I think that's dope.
Thanks.
Yeah. It ultimately reflects the experience that you had and that you're providing for others.
Yeah.
Yeah. To talk a little bit more about your concept. You look at me like that.
What? I'm listening. You're talking and I'm listening.
To talk about your process, you said that your concept was this relationship, this cycle of being attached to something, letting it go, having time pass, understanding more about it, returning to it. I'm just trying to tie it into what you said about where you're into religion. So it was understanding that something was the absolute truth, and then the detachment was being curious and searching for your own truth, and then the spending time. Are we in the spending time phase part right now where you're creating work, or are we in the coming back part of it? That's kind of what I'm trying to figure out. Where in this cycle are you currently?
Yeah, I think it's this is the thing, and then you depart from it when you learn more about it, because you start to not like it, and then you learn even more about it, and then you come back to it.
I see.
And then you learn more again, you don't like it. You learn more, you like it again.
I see.
I think I'm I was right here for 2 years. Yeah. Maybe.
And for the people that can't see, she was on the part where she didn't like it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think now I'm here-ish.
Okay.
I think, interestingly though, it's not exactly a circle cycle. I think it's this, where you'll constantly be evolving. Your relationship will never be the same way it was again from the beginning.
Yeah.
But it's gonna evolve, and I think if you're learning right, you will cycle back. You're not just going to keep making bigger and bigger arcs away. Yeah. You are going to have parts where you're able to recognize the value of something again. And so actually part of the exhibition is I'm showing how this cycle of knowing applies to me in three different ways. One being religion, one being how I view death, and then one being how I view my parents. But I feel the most accessible of those, being my parents, because it's an interpersonal relationship and you can apply that to anyone, but I feel with everyone, it's you really are buddies with someone, and you learn something about them or something, you go through something together, and you could just kind of go away, but then they're a person, you understand that, and you come back, so I feel it's yeah, that's the cycle of relationships, all right. Relationships, if that cycle isn't happening, I'm curious if there was any, if people were being genuine, right? If there's any growth happening, yeah. And it's okay for things to fall apart a bit, because that rubber band effect is real. You might come back stronger, you might not. It kind of is just a part of life. Yeah, but I
So,
feel like in any type of processing, it's really valuable to be able to have that come back.
yeah.
If you like are processing something hard and you end up over here, it's kind of hard to have like peace with that.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think.
I agree.
But anyone can believe anything, so.
Everybody's truth is everybody's truth.
The long ass point.
You just gotta let them know. You just have to let them know. We did an interview before where you interviewed me for my solo show. Great interview. You had wonderful questions. I'm curious on how your background in journalism has affected your art journey.
I think journalism is so interesting for so many reasons, but I'll just pick one, I guess. Is in journalism you're trying to tell a story. In doing so, to do that, you have to interview a bunch of different people. And if you have a good story, you're interviewing people from opposite sides. And so I think journalism taught me that like a good story is multifaceted and you can't just come from one side, you have to come from multiple. And so I think that's part of my process for gathering imagery for good art is I'm coming from multiple sources to try to tell a good story.
Wonderful response. There you go.
That's my journalism degree coming into action. I know how to tell. I know how to tell it straight.
You told it straight.
And quick.
You did it right to the point.
The inverted pyramid, yeah.
Yeah, that's going to be the clip.
Yeah. And that's why you should get a journalism degree.
There you go.
I didn't go into journalism, though.
So you don't have a journalism degree?
I do, but I'm just saying I didn't go into
post it.
Yeah, professionally. So I can't say if I can advocate for a journalism degree because...
It still added to your whole experience, though. Like,
it did.
I don't have a graphic design job. I also don't have a graphic designer degree. That's why I had to stop. I was like, oh, it's not even. But still, like the time that you spent getting that degree, I think, has shaped your career as an artist. Mm-hmm. For sure.
It also makes you very curious about like all the things that exist. Yeah, you just have to like ask people a bunch of questions and be interested in what they say, and then.
I have another question for you.
Okay.
This one's kind of personal, so you don't have to answer it or not. Because you said it led you to just being curious. Did your exploration into journalism, was that also the part of your detachment to religion? Like, did that happen at the same time period in your life?
It did all happen in college.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it was just more like because yeah, in college I majored in journalism, got minors in religion and art.
Yeah. And
for my minor, I did an internship like every semester. Every summer I was like out of town. I was out of state one year, out of the country another year.
Okay, I see.
Doing internships, and I think it was like me being curious about everything going on around me that did lead me to realize that like it wasn't for me.
I see.
And so I think it was like a both and, you know, like journalism gave me the skepticism and like the ability to ask good questions and like also give credit to what people are saying. I think a lot of what I was taught in church growing up was to use people's words to show how they're wrong.
Yeah. You
know, to try to convert them.
And to
but
shame them.
In journalism, you're taught like you have to take what people say as like that they're a source. They're a source of information. You can't just be like use their quote and then your paragraph after is like why they're wrong. You have to use them as like valid information.
I see.
And so I think both of those work together basically to just like broaden my
perspective.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for being vulnerable enough to answer that too.
Yeah.
Yeah. In front of the whole world.
Our 3 million viewers.
Yeah. It'll happen.
Our 10 million subscribers.
Yeah, it might be 10, but hey, it's gonna happen. It'll get there.
10 million.
10 million. You gotta speak it into existence. I'm here for it. I think I only have one more question for you. Oh, well, you answered it. Yeah, so tell us how everyone can follow you. And
well, where I am online is Art by Rewon on Instagram, Art by Rewon. That's my name. Don't wear it out. And my website is www.Rewon Shimray, my last name, Shimray. That's my name. Don't wear it out.com.
The whole thing. Just the name.
RewonShimray.com.
There you go.
Yeah.
Just the name. Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you so much for coming here and being
thanks for having me.
a guest on the show. Yeah, cool.